Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday, December the 11th. And welcome to our commentary. And as we like to do once a week, we'll be chatting with our good friend, George Rodriguez from South Texas. I've got a lot on my plate today for George. So, George, I hope you are ready I hope you brought all your political appetite to the conversation today because we got a lot to get into.
I'm ready.
All right. How's the weather? It's kind of nice here. Really.
It's kind of chilly. It got down to
chilly. Yeah.
It got down to 33 this morning here.
Yeah, it was about that here. It was about that here. I don't know exactly what it is now, but it's probably
bounced up. Here it's 60 right now, so it's bounced up.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite that high here, but let me just take a quick look now that you caught my curiosity. It's 57. Okay, so it's not that much different. I always find that the weather in Dallas and San Antonio is the only difference is that I think it's usually hotter in San Antonio, isn't it, George?
Yeah.
No, I think so, yeah. All right, well, let's talk about three big stories this week. A judge by the name of Nato Tijerina, I think that's his name, down in Webb County, decided to switch parties, and it's created quite a scene. Nato Tijerina, it was a Democrat, I guess, until yesterday or the day before, and he decided to switch party. He's in Webb County, which is, I believe, Laredo, right, George? Laredo?
Correct.
Yeah. Do you know him? I have had a chance to chat with him at all?
I know of his family.
Yeah.
I do not know the gentleman personally, but I know of his family. It is a very, very big, earth-shaking change. A lot of people don't understand the situation, and the fact of the matter is that Webb County and Laredo are kind of like the heart of South Texas, of the Rio Grande area, and his becoming a Republican really sent a seismic quake through the area. Now, we had already seen that 14 of the 18 counties down there had voted Republican.
Right.
And we had
including, sorry to interrupt you, but including Starr County, right?
Including Starr County.
Starr County is more San Antonio, right? Closer to
No. It's more towards Brownsville. It's further down.
Okay, in that area. Yeah, but Starr County, I mean, that is...
That is really...
Yeah, but they said that is the biggest Mexican-American county
in the nation.
South Texas, in the nation, yeah. It's a huge county. So Webb County includes Laredo, right?
Laredo is the biggest city in... and it is also the biggest entry point for commerce over land. Bigger than Montreal and
really
Detroit. Wow. It is the biggest. And so the commerce is very, very big there.
Now, so this fellow, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Him switching parties is really a big deal.
No, yeah. I mean, I think this is tremendous. And his family, Tijerina, is that a prominent Democrat family down there?
The Tijerinas have been around at least for 100 years.
Wow.
The area there. We've got to remember that Laredo, when it was founded in 1750 something, was founded by very landed, wealthy, well-educated Spaniards, and that whole system remained even through after the Texas Mexican War, after the Alamo, after the Mexican War with the U.S. After the Civil War, it remained the prominent families. And one of the reasons that Nuevo Laredo was created was because people that wanted, prominent families that wanted to stay Mexican moved across the river, while prominent families that wanted to become American stayed on this side. And the ones on this side, while they in latter years, while they were very Democrat, they have always been very adamant about being American, to the point that they have a George Washington celebration every year.
Wow.
And this George Washington celebration it celebrates the colonialism of America.
Mhm.
And you would, you look at this and you go, what the heck? I mean, it's a 90% Mexican American community, and they celebrate George Washington. So it's, on the other hand, it's been Democrat run for well over 100 years. Very, very
Now, the
Democrats.
not again, just to fill in some of the blanks, because the reason, of course, it was a Democrat area was this is probably an outgrowth of the Civil War, right? I mean,
Correct.
a lot of this.
It's both an outgrowth of the Civil War and land clashes, or cattle clashes between rival families too.
Right. Now, a lot of these Mexican American families, like the Tijerina there in South Texas, many of them were families that identified more with Texas as a free state than with Mexico during the
Correct.
Mexican War. Right. Now,
Correct.
these are some of the people who fought for the independence of Texas. Right. These families. Right.
Correct.
Now, how significant do you think this is, George? How significant this is to, let's say, a fellow like Representative Henry Cuellar? How significant do you think this is for him?
Well, it's
Because
going to be. It's got to have an impact.
this is his district.
Yes,
congressional
it's
district.
the heart of his district.
Yeah.
It's got to have an impact because, as it is, Henry Cuellar is considered a conservative Democrat.
Right, exactly.
And he has been on the outs with a lot of the radicals.
Right.
With a lot of the radicals like Ocasio-Cortez, like Kamala. They have been on the outs very much.
Right.
And so this switching of parties is going to have a significant impact, in my opinion, on his view, on his politics.
Let me pursue another point, because I thought it was very interesting when the judge explained why he switched, and he talked. At least the memo that I read said that, number one, he was concerned about the border, of course, which makes sense given his location. Number two, he was concerned about men playing in girls' sports, that issue, which of course I've got to believe that's not a winner for the Democrats.
Well, it's not a winner for in the Hispanic community.
Well, that's it in the whole country, but especially there.
I don't know.
But here's the third reason that I thought was fascinating that the judge stated, and I thought this was, a lot of people don't get this. You will, but a lot of people are not going to get this one. He is critical of the Democrat Party and their attacks on the oil and gas industry. Well, yeah. Who do you think creates jobs in this county and in this whole section? Yeah,
exactly.
And so, I mean, when I saw his reasons, the first two sounded pretty much what I expected, but the one about the oil and gas industry, I mean, that really hit me, because I think if this judge is concerned about it, I guarantee you, there's thousands of them down there who are concerned about it.
Let me tell you, one of the things that I have been seeing for the past 4 years, well, that I saw for the past 8 years, was when Trump came in and he opened up the leasing and he opened up the drilling and everything else. There were communities, very, very poor Mexican American communities in South Texas, that suddenly had a job boom. There were also many school districts who suddenly were leasing property, and they had money so that they could educate their kids, so they could buy computers, so they could do all sorts of things, fix up the school. And then all of a sudden, and I mean, literally, it was like a light being turned off. The minute that Biden came in January, everything stopped, because that's what he did. And when that stopped, immediately people in South Texas started noticing.
George, you're right.
Then the skyrocketing of gas prices for people that have to travel a long distance. That didn't help.
You're right. But I think a lot of people don't realize, and I've had conversations with people who don't realize this, and because they think all the oil is in West Texas. They think everything in oil is Lubbock and Odessa and Midland. And of course, those are big places for oil. But what you have down on the border is refineries because of proximity to the Gulf. Just like there are fracking also.
Fracking, which is new. Which is new. And it's it's caught on like crazy in these areas.
Right. So when I saw his explanation, the first issue was the border. Well, okay, that makes sense given everything going on. And then he mentioned this thing about transgenders. Well, yeah, I mean, that's pretty obvious that that's not going to go over well. But when he mentioned oil and gas, I thought, oh my gosh, this guy is really touching a nerve here, because he is speaking probably for hundreds, if not thousands, of people down there. Corpus Christi is a huge refinery town. And that's not in Webb County, though, is it?
No, that's Nueces County.
But that's right next to it, isn't it?
Right.
Very
And they are another one that has really been impacted by the green movement.
Right. So, I mean, I think this fellow, Judge Tijerina, is probably going to be getting, his first name is Nato. He's got to have a different name.
Tano.
Okay. Tano. I said
Nato.
My fault. Yeah, my fault. My fault. I gotta correct that on the spelling of my American Thinker post, because I wrote one about him. But anyway, so it's just fascinating. And if this judge is moving, I have a funny feeling that other moves will come. I just think that there will be others.
There's got to be
others.
And
George, even if they don't move, they will vote.
Yes.
Which is really what matters, I guess. They will vote, even if they cannot move for political reasons or commitments or whatever it may be.
Well, the situation I mean, if they weren't moving, you wouldn't have seen the amount of voting for Trump. I mean, all of these people are voting very, very quietly.
Right.
But they're doing it. And unfortunately, the Democrats, well, not unfortunately, I mean, for us, it's great, but they just don't seem to be getting the picture. They just don't seem to be getting the message.
No, I mean, this is like they're missing the pitch by a mile. They can't see it. I mean, they're just missing the whole thing. All right. Well, another big story that I want to get into is the speaker. I still think it's going to be David Cook. I don't know how you feel about it. I still think it's going to be David Cook. I think he is the best package, especially for the governor, who definitely wants to get vouchers. And I think with Cook, at least he'll force a vote on it. But you mentioned the other fellow whose name escapes. Burrows. Okay. All right. Burrows. I was thinking of Clyde, but that's another. Remember Bonnie and Clyde? Clyde Burrows, wasn't
Clyde
he?
Burrow.
Yeah, wasn't that him? But that's a bad joke on my part. That was another Clyde Burrows. But anyway, how do you see it? Both sides seem to be claiming that they've got it, but I think Cook has it, or at least has a better chance. How do you see it, George?
I definitely think Cook has it. There have already been some defections. Cook was claiming, Burrows was claiming that he had 5 or 6 extra votes, which would help him to get over the top. And these five or six Republicans came out yesterday or late yesterday and said no, they hadn't committed. In fact, all of them said they were going to go with Cook. Okay. So that really undermines him. I think he's trying to play politics and trying to get some kind of negotiating card to the table, but I don't think it's going to work.
Well, I think he's doing a little bit of what they call psychological warfare, trying to play games with people's heads. But I saw a tweet earlier today, George, that the Governor Abbott was saying, I didn't endorse him or I didn't sign something. That apparently there's something, he's putting something out there that the governor is endorsing him, Burrows, that is. And the governor said, no, I haven't.
That doesn't look good.
Yeah. So, no, that's it. Somebody made a mistake there. You don't want to play with the governor. So I think it's going to be Cook. But will it leave the party bloody or?
I don't think so.
Will everybody forget this the next day?
No, I think from what I've seen, there have always been really messy, elections for speaker.
Right.
Always there have been. But the fact of the matter is that the speaker carries so much power that eventually everybody just either swallows their pride and goes along, or they're just quiet. They're just quiet. And they
in the Texas Constitution, we know that the lieutenant governor runs the Senate, basically. I mean, that's his.
That's
He
his thing.
controls the Senate. But the Speaker of the House, I mean, we think of like in the terms of the federal speaker, the U.S. Congress, the speaker there, like, has a lot of power. But I understand that the speaker in Texas has even more power, that he
Yeah.
can do things. I mean, he can pretty much be a lieutenant governor practically in how he does things. He decides what's going to come to a vote, right? He decides who chairs a committee. He has a tremendous amount of power, contrary to other. I mean, even in Washington, the speaker doesn't have as much power as they do in Texas, George.
Yeah, the speaker and the lieutenant governor are the result of very powerful governors that were appointed after the Civil War. And so they practically have equal power to the governor.
Mm-hmm.
In many cases, the lieutenant governor does have more power than the governor. And so the state constitution made it so that the speaker and the lieutenant governor, particularly the lieutenant governor, who were elected directly by the people rather than appointed by the federal government after the Civil War, they have the power. And I mean, he's going to be a very, very powerful person.
And at least right now, again, December 11th, it's still a month away because they're not going to put the legislature together until, I think, the first week of January, right? So that's when they'll take a vote, I guess. But I think it's going to be Cook, and I think that's a good move because I think Cook is much closer to the governor. Not that the other guy is far away, but I think Cook is much closer.
I think Burroughs has made several mistakes, including this one of saying that the governor endorsed him.
Right.
Of him getting out in front of these other Republicans and saying that they are on his side. I think one of the major blunders is that he's gotten the speaker of the Democrats, the speaker who is the guy who has been elected speaker of the Democrats, is a bomb-throwing radical. I mean, he is to the left. He is a proponent and supporter of AOC, of Kamala. I mean, he is really, really, really to the left, and which tells you where the Democrats are headed.
Right, and that's what Tijerina was saying.
That's exactly right.
Getting back to the judge, I mean, some of the comments that he made were exactly those, that the party is, I mean, he basically said without saying so, but I mean, I'm kind of putting words in his mouth, in the judge's mouth, but I think what he meant to say is that this is not the Democrat Party he grew up in.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
I think that's what.
And Wu represents that new radical wing.
Right.
And it's, I mean, he is, for him to get out there and endorse Burroughs is, to me, like the kiss of death.
I agree with you. Let me get into another story here as we wrap up a little bit, and that is this unbelievable story that you mentioned to me on the phone today of more and more children showing up at the border. And what is the Border Patrol? How are they reacting to this? I know you know many of them. This has got to be the nightmare for the Border Patrol to get a bunch of kids by themselves. Because obviously you got to take care of the kids, but who are these kids and who are they connected to? And we've heard about all these kids missing in the United States that have come through the border. I mean, this is the nightmare scenario. I've always said that this is one of the reasons why the border policy is such a mistake. What is being done to these kids? They're being used. They're being brought up here by like this. And I just, it's got to be a nightmare. I guess I'm asking you a long-winded question, but what can you tell us about all these kids showing up at the border? What are you hearing?
Well, there's hundreds of them. I mean, it's probably in the thousands at this point.
Yeah.
And it is a direct result of the Trump victory. What is happening is that adults that are illegally in the United States are sending for these kids to quickly get up here so that they can be reunified under the assumption, and this is an assumption on their part, that they are going to stay as families once they are reunified. Family reunification has been a big thing under the Biden administration that allows people to stay in the United States indefinitely. It hasn't been completely addressed by the Trump administration, but we know that it's probably that in all probability that it's going to go away. That policy is going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And what is really tragic is to see these kids. There was a situation only 3 weeks ago where a 2-year-old,
Right.
a 2-year-old was found completely abandoned, completely lost. What's happening is that the coyotes, the smugglers, are just dumping them across the river
Right.
and running off. And it's
Amazing.
really sad.
No, it's horrific. It's horrific. There's no other way to put it. Now, I think what you were talking about a minute ago is that the Trump administration is going to challenge this, what they call the birthright assumption, right?
No, that's a different one. That's
a
completely
different one. Okay, because that is also, I mean, Trump is also talking about that.
Yes.
And there is George. There's a debate about this. Maybe you probably know more about it than I do, but there's the assumption that if you cross the border, you're automatically a citizen, or if you're born here and you cross the border,
you're automatically
a citizen. You're automatically a citizen. But that's not what the 14th Amendment says. The 14th Amendment was talking about, of course, a very specific situation after the Civil War with blacks who didn't have citizenship. So you had to create a citizenship avenue, if you will. And the avenue they created was if you were born in North Carolina or Georgia or whatever, you're a citizen. But that's a totally different situation here. Those people were already here when they became citizens. These are people who are coming over. And to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, there has never been a Supreme Court opinion addressing specifically the issue of people who come here without papers. There have been some maybe lower courts that have expressed something like that, but no Supreme Court opinion. And I think the Trump strategy is, let's get this to the Supreme Court. Let's get the Supreme Court to come down one way or the other, because if the Supreme Court comes down and says, no, they are citizens, well, then they are citizens. But if the Supreme Court says, well, no, they're not, and they cannot be considered citizens because of their immigration status, then that changes the conversation. They can no longer say you're automatically a citizen. So I think that's what the Trump administration is trying to do. They want to get to this to the Supreme Court for an opinion, which I believe, I'll go ahead of myself here and say that I believe if it does go to the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court will find that they are not entitled to citizenship because of their immigration situation. That's what I think the court will say, but maybe I'm wrong, George.
No, I agree. I think that when push comes to shove, what is left out whenever there's an argument about the 14th Amendment, there's always a phrase in there that's left out that specifically says the children of non-citizens who were under the jurisdiction of the United States. So again, that means that they were under the jurisdiction. They were here. They were slaves. On the other hand, if somebody is coming in from outside the country, they are foreigners. They were never under the jurisdiction of the United States.
Right. You're talking about the parents.
The parents.
The parents who come here and then have the baby.
So therefore, it does not apply to them.
Well, I think this whole thing has been completely abused. I really do.
Tremendously.
Yeah, I think it's been completely abused. And well, I have sympathy for the kids. They're in the middle of this, obviously. But I think it's been terribly abused. And there has to be a definition. There has to be a definition of it so that we have the ground rules. I think what the Trump administration is going to do, they'll write an executive order. Immediately will be challenged in the courts. Yeah. But that's okay, because then that takes it up. When you start appealing it, then that'll take it up at least to the appeals courts and eventually to the Supreme Court. But this whole story about the kids on the border, it's going to drive the Border Patrol crazy, because that's not what they're supposed to be doing.
It is very, very, until you see that. I mean, it's very heartbreaking to see 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds crying because they don't know where they're at.
Right.
They don't know where their parents are. They are afraid of people in uniforms. I mean, they are just, it's really tragic to see.
Look, I have a grandson who's 4.5 years old. I can only imagine. I can only imagine the emotion breakdown.
Imagine losing him at the mall.
Right, exactly. And then you don't know where he is, or he shows up somewhere else and he's confused. I mean, but this is the humanitarian crisis that has been created at the border. It isn't just the adults, it's the children And this is why, more than anything else, this is why I want to fix this problem, so that we have people coming in legally, so that we have people coming in as a family. Like I
Together
came,
as a family.
yeah, I came here that way with my parents, and so I just think this is the reason why we have to fix this problem, because it's completely out of control right now. Completely
And
out of
it's
control.
not like it's, a few kids coming across that you
No.
might be able to help. It's hundreds, it's thousands of them, and
Well,
it's
George, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's just
Thousands.
really tragic. It
Yeah.
just
Well, some people in the audience may remember a program. Now, Cubans know this, and you probably know, because you know your
the
Cuban
little
history
kids,
quite well.
yes,
Yeah, the Pedro Pan. That's what they were called, the
little
Pedro
fun.
Pan. And the Pedro Pan were actually, they were up to 18 years old. Actually, there were more teenagers left under Pedro Pan than little kids. There may have been a few 5 or 6 years old, but the 90% of them were teenagers or closer to 18 or 20 years old. In that program, they were taken to the airport, put in a plane, headed to Miami. And in Miami, there was a representative of the Catholic Church who usually took them. And then they tried to put them with a family or so while they were waiting for their parents to come over. But that program, while it had its mistakes, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was perfect, for the most part, it worked okay. At least the kids
It
were
was very
protected.
controlled. It was
It
very
was.
controlled.
It was very good, because when you were here, you were either under the supervision of the church that brought you, or you were under the supervision of another family. You were generally in a household with a family. You weren't in a somewhere by yourself.
And they tried that. They tried that approach. But the thing was that there were thousands of kids coming across. There have been
Right.
thousands, and they have been overwhelmed.
I
So
know.
rather than stop the spigot, they just let it run and did what they could.
Right. And just to put it in perspective, what is now the popular name for this Cuban program now is called Pedro Pan. That's the popular name for it. It was not called that back then, but it became known as Pedro Pan. The Pedro Pan program brought to the United States 14,000 kids. 14,000.
And that's
Compare
probably
that
how
to
many come
this.
across. That's probably how many kids come across in 2 months here now.
Right. So, I mean, just to put it in perspective, I mean, they were managing 14,000 people, kids, teenagers.
Totally.
And
Totally.
I've known many of them over the years. In fact, our family was approached in Cuba to send us in that fashion, my brother and I, to send us under it wasn't called Pedro Pan back then, but that's what everybody knows it as. And my mother said, no, we leave together or we stay together. And I'm glad she did that, because I don't think I could have imagined being separated from my parents at that time.
Yeah.
But still, the program was supervised and run much better than this.
Oh, this
And
is...
nobody was dropping off Cuban kids at the airport and saying, hey, they're here.
Whatever.
You knew who was coming on that flight because arrangements had been made. So anyway, what a terrible mess.
It is. It really is.
Really mess.
And another part of that is the number of pets that have been abandoned as well. Many people have brought their pets and abandoned them at the border because they couldn't bring them in, and it's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking to see the kids. Right. Heartbreaking to see the pets.
Yeah, the whole thing is a mess, and I keep thinking about the poor Border Patrol agent.
Yes.
Who didn't sign up for this. This is not what they signed up for. They signed up to protect the border, and here they are. They're being put through this. Well, George, as always, your commentary is the best, and I want to thank you so much for bringing us up to date. It's the 11th of December. I hope we chat before Christmas. But tell me, San Antonio is very beautiful at Christmas time. I remember going down there one time for that big football game that they have there at
the Alamo Bowl.
The Alamo Bowl, but that's after Christmas. But still,
this year it's BYU plays Colorado.
All right,
looking forward to that.
All right, but the decorations of the city that I remember, were actually very beautiful. San Antonio has something that not too many other cities have, and that is a very traditional Spanish and of course Mexican view of Christmas, and that means that some of the decorations are things that remind me of my childhood, and also just the overall, the things that that you don't see, let's say, in Dallas or another parts of the country. It's a very Mexican or Spanish Christmas, and I like that. I think there's a lot of tradition to that. Plus, you get to eat tamales, right?
Yes. I'm already
You,
eating them.
yeah, that's the big traditional dish there
Oh,
at Christmas time. George, again, thank you so much for joining us, and I really appreciate your time. And let's do it again. I think we will. I think we'll do
thank
it
you.
again before Christmas. But if I don't see you before Christmas, or at least if I don't see you
Yeah,
like this, Merry Christmas to you and to your family, and we'll chat after that. But thank you so much.
you got it. Thank you very much.
All
Bye-bye.
right, my pleasure. Our good friend, George Rodriguez. George Rodriguez from South Texas. Always enjoyed chatting with him, getting his perspective on what's happening down there. We talked today about the kids who keep showing up at the border. What a tragedy that is. If you really want to find out what a humanitarian crisis is, when you're dropping off kids at the border or kids are showing up at the border, that, in my mind, is the definition of a humanitarian crisis. I mean, I heard something that I don't know if my figure is correct, so I'm not going to put a figure on it, but I heard thousands of kids they just lost them. Nobody knows where they are. Thousands of kids. Who did they end up with? Are they even alive? Some of these kids. Who's got them? On what conditions? So what a tragedy. What an absolute tragedy. Well, thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.